Hi guys, and welcome back to Cheeky Crypto. In this video, we're taking another look at XRP to see exactly what is going on with the price action of the XRP coin, guys. As we get into the video, if you find it useful and informative, then do go ahead and hit the like button. I really do appreciate that. If you are new, then do subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will be kept well up to date with what is going on here with XRP. Now, guys, we're going to take a look at a few things for XRP here to start with. We're obviously going to have a look at the technical analysis, but we're also going to cover a little bit of news, and we're also going to see what the 𝗲𝗓 dashboard has to say about XRP as well. Now, this is going to be the first of a series of videos that I am going to be dropping, so we'll be taking a look at a few other altcoins after this video, so do check the channel out if you want to see a few more. Right, let's get things started though with what's going on in the news. So most recently we've seen this piece, which is, did your employees trade XRP? Basically, Ripple is going after the SEC staff as discovery deadline pushed, right? And we'll go through the short stuff. I won't read the entire article, but I'll go through a few of these things. So Ripple has filed a motion that is seeking to compel the SEC to disclose whether its employees traded XRP, as it seeks to prove that the SEC didn't consider digital assets as securities. And this all comes down to, guys, what is going on in this lawsuit, right? Basically, SEC I guess employees cannot trade securities. They need permission to do so. So what they're looking for here is to see whether or not XRP has actually been traded by any of the employees of the SEC, and whether or not they had to seek, approval from their superiors to be able to actually, hold and trade XRP. And if this is the case, that no one was actually, authorized to trade XRP, but was trading XRP at the time, what does that actually mean? Does that mean that the SEC didn't actually see XRP as a security and all of that kind of good stuff? So again, this is basically all about whether or not to consider digital assets as security, right? And this is an interesting piece. You can see it like it's pulling on the thread to see what might actually come of it. So elsewhere, a judge has approved a joint request between Ripple and the SEC to extend the discovery deadline until November 12th. Okay, so some interesting stuff are going on here. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you will be able to check this one out. I'll pop it into the description of the video, so if you want to read the entire thing, you can get your heads into that. But I do find this interesting. It's good to see that they are pulling on that thread. I think that's going to be a major thing later in the case. So pretty cool stuff going on there. And the next thing we want to do is actually take a look at the artificial intelligence of the 𝗲𝗓 dashboard, right? How has Ripple's data been understood from this AI and machine learning? They actually pushed this up a rating. So they've moved it basically from a B1 up to an A3 rating. So the rating today is actually increased on XRP, which is a pretty good thing to see. But obviously, we'll take a look at the technicals to see if this continues. And obviously, we'll have to have a look at the 𝗲𝗓 dashboard at midnight and see if this actually has changed. Has it sustained an A3, or is it going to A2? Or is it actually going to be pulling back down, right? There's lots of things that are going on. There's a few things we obviously have to consider here inside this data, because we do get a couple of callouts. Their power factors here at advice.io. We have the fear and greed index for XRP. This is actually a B1 rating. We can see how it's coming down from the extremely greedy scenario. It's nowhere near fearful, so that's pretty good to see. But this is a really important thing, right? When we see it up in extreme greed, when it was over here, midway through the month of August, this is generally where profits are taken, right? And when it's very fearful, that's when you'd be buying the dip. Okay, so right now you can see that some profits have been taken off the table. And again, that's very natural, and it's good to see that this is actually reflected in the fear and greed index. The AMI-HAD ratio in terms of liquidity isn't doing too bad either, an A2 rating. So you can definitely see why the overall rating has increased from a B1 to an A3. So that's pretty cool. The moving averages are an A2. They've got the peak and value demand at a C2. And again, Sharpe ratio, risk to holding XRP right now, very, very low. It's an A2 rating, the second best position that you can see from this artificial intelligence. And again, the profitability is right up there as an A1 rating. So again, if we're talking about the Sharpe ratio, the risk to holding and the risk to rewards for XRP is just not there, right? So there's no risk associated with it, or very limited amount of risk associated with holding XRP at this point. And we can see the profitability is right up there at an A1. You can see the averages are doing really well. We can see that there's no liquidity related problems. So we can see that actually the fear and greed index is no longer greedy, no longer fearful, right in the middle. So that's going to be pretty positive stuff. So you can tell why this artificial intelligence has buffed up, basically pushing up the rating here for XRP. So that's really, really cool stuff to see. Everything kind of unfolding quite nicely in front of our eyes. Now, when we actually jump into the charts here for XRP, obviously we have been talking about an ABC correction wave, right? We can obviously see on the smaller time frames. Now, this is a part of the big impulse wave to the upside. So again, nothing too unusual at this point. So we'll get into that daily chart in a moment, and we'll go through what is going on with that ABC correction. Now, we can obviously see, though, that our stochastic relative strength index is pushing back to the upside, coming up into the overbought area now. And again, this is something that we saw quite a bit, right? We can see that we come right up to the top here, and we have pulled right the way down into the oversold area during this correction. Now, obviously, the other thing that we can look for are other kind of corrections, right? We can see that this kind of correction that we've seen over here, we were overbought, went down to oversold without actually doing too much damage to the price, right? This was lining up quite nicely for us towards the end of the year. Obviously, you know, everything that was going on with the SEC obviously came a bit of a shock and pushed the price right the way down overnight. But otherwise, everything was lining up very, very nicely for XRP, right? And this deliberate move to basically suppress the price and pull it all the way down. Now, obviously, it has had a good run after that, but obviously this did a lot of damage. Lots of people lost a lot of money out of XRP because of this, and this is all down to 𝗕𝗘𝗪𝗓 and what he did just before Christmas. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that we were overbought and oversold under normal circumstances without doing too much damage to the price. Now, when we go up into the overbought area here, what we'll look for is we'll look for a similar move like this, right? We'll find a good support line, hopefully this $1.07, but I'd like to think that actually we could probably bottom out at 93 cents if there is a C wave correction that goes all that way down there. And in doing so, that would be enough to get us into the oversold area on this weekly before we have another major push to the upside in like we saw over here. Okay, so pretty good stuff is to come on the horizon here. We're in the middle of this correction, and we'll get into that in just a moment on the daily. Obviously, I do want to call out the $16 price target. Again, this is the Fibonacci retracement and extension of the 4.236. I do see some of those comments dropping around. I think people really do misunderstand what market capitalization is and what it is not. It is not the amount of money that flows into a project. It is a simple calculation of the current price, as in the last sold price of XRP multiplied by the circulating supply. Obviously, if you bought XRP a month ago, you paid a very different price to what you're paying for it today, right? Likewise, if you're down here buying it during, let's say, May or June, XRP is significantly lower than it is today, right? Does that mean that the market capitalization represents the money that was actually paid for XRP? It doesn't, guys. It's a very simple calculation. So for all those people who are dropping comments or are wanting to understand more about why we talk about $16 and all that kind of stuff, you first of all have to do some research on market capitalization and to understand what it is and what it is not, because it's very important. It's going to be a barrier in stopping you from investing correctly. It is basically a representation of the price and not a representation of the value, and many people get this confused, specifically if they come from traditional finance areas or the stock market, for example, where, you know, market capitalization has a little bit more of a bearing, right? You know, companies have valuations associated with them based on trading of stocks, etc., right? But you don't tend to see this so much inside, you know, a decentralized nature that is blockchain. So instead, you end up with cryptocurrencies that are fluctuating in price, which only really represent two things: the supply and the demand for the token itself. So you squeeze the supply, you know, get it crushed down, basically hodl it. And when the demand comes in, there's less supply for them to gobble up, and therefore the price is basically pushed up with it. As a result of basically what you see in the shops now, right? Specifically in the UK, where you just can't get any kind of bread, for example, right? Because of various different issues. And basically, as a result of that, you're going to start seeing price increases. And again, in line with inflation and everything else that's going on, you can't print all the money in the world and then expect things to either, you know, become cheaper or stay at the same value. In fact, you know, prices go up because the money that we're trading becomes more worthless. Okay, so when it comes to market capitalization, guys, you really have to understand it in a little bit more detail than maybe you are, because some of the comments are just they're very misguided. So market cap is not a barrier to $16. The only barrier to $16 is supply and demand. Okay, so enough said on that. Let's get into what is going on with the daily. Okay, this is where we start seeing the ABC correction wave. Okay, and before we kind of talk about that ABC correction, We will talk about this trend line. We can see there was a nice trend line here, moving to the upside. This was also broken recently, okay? So this, again, basically does put more emphasis on this C wave correction. So we'll just dive into this now as we talk about it, right? So obviously the upward trend line was broken when we saw this come down here on the 26th of August, right? And this is also when we broke our support line. So we did a video on this where we said we've broken support, what to expect next kind of scenario. Obviously, we are oversold on this daily chart, okay? And that is an important note to just make a note of as well. Now, we can stay down here for quite some time on the stochastic relative strength index. But when we actually flip this out and switch it into our relative strength index, we can see that actually we have a lot more room to fall down, right? So we know that there's a lot more room to potentially push the price of XRP down, which is why we have this C wave correction going down to potentially 93 cent. I'm not saying that it does definitely happen, right? But it's something that we have to acknowledge is here. Technically, it hasn't exited. It is still in play. Now we are, of course, above support. So whereas these waves can be invalidated very, very quickly, the main thing that we want to focus in on is the support line. So when we broke the support here, the expectation was to kind of hopefully push back up, and if we did, that was good, and we hopefully will sustain that. With this note being said, however, we have obviously invalidated our upward trend line. That's a problem. And of course, as long as we stay above our $1.07 support line, that should be pretty positive to keep us going to the upside. With that being said, though, there is a higher probability right now, the fact that we have lost our trend line. And if we do end up breaking our support, then 93 cent is probably where my opinion lies. But obviously, we can obviously see a couple of additional things in here. So I'm going to throw on that stochastic relative strength index so we know it down here. We can continue to be down here for quite some time. The other thing we need to acknowledge is there's going to be an ABC wave inside of our regular C wave here, right? So we can see that there is a wave to the downside. We pushed back up, and again, then we'll look to finish the C down at the bottom, right? So there's another ABC, and they're all kind of coming together, right? So there's waves within waves within waves, and you can see it here, wave 1, 2, and then a C, right? And then you go back up and so forth, right? So it's important that we obviously acknowledge that depending on what time frames you're looking at, there's going to be multiple different waves, right? So we know that there's an ABC wave on the bigger picture on this daily, but we also know that there's an ABC wave inside of our C wave as well, so we can see that happening. Obviously, the only question that we have is whether we're going to lose our support and actually go down to these lower levels. Now, we have to go down lower than the bottom of A, okay? So we know that the C wave is always going to be lower than A if we're going to get it. That means we are going to have to lose this area if we do see this ABC get completed. Okay, so the real emphasis right now for XRP is on $1.07, and we must hold this if we want to avoid going down to 93 cent. Okay, but again, we talk about the weekly is heading to the everable area. At some point, we are going to have that correction, and this 93 cent area is something that we want to be paying attention to. Of course, there are a couple of areas of other interest, right? $1 is also below our A here, and could be a good theoretical kind of stopper for us. So halfway down towards our 93 cent, that could also be the area that we actually stop, right? This is the support line that I'm seeing, but obviously I think $1 could be something we could also see come to fruition. So for me personally, there will be some accumulation zones in here. Obviously my XRP bags are absolutely full, right? It's my biggest bag, right? So it's important that we obviously acknowledge that I'm not going to be buying any more, but I do know where I would be buying some, and I will drop that video to the members in a little while. So do watch out for that one. Okay. So obviously on this daily chart, we obviously acknowledge that if we lose support, then we are looking to complete the C wave. Let's actually go down into our hourly, and here we can see a little bit more of the most recent price action, right? Here we can see that we're actually really fighting up against our trend line. We lost it, we pushed up, and then we went back down below it, right? This has completely invalidated our trend line to the upside. The other thing that we have to acknowledge is we overbought on this hourly, so the expectation here will basically be to either trade sideways, push up a little bit higher maybe, but there will be a correction back to the downside that will be required in order to correct our stochastic. Now, obviously, that correction doesn't have to be major. You can have a small pullback and just trade sideways. And obviously take out that momentum of the stochastic. And again, you could have a steeper correction and then literally just take off like that, right? Come down into the overbought and then take off. And lots of different ways it can play out. One of the things that you really want to be paying attention to here is sentiment. So we can see straight away that the volumes are decreasing. As long as the volumes stay nice and low, that's going to be indicative of a sideways trade. Not so much price damage is going to be done at all, and that will correct our stochastic, okay? And our relative strength index would also follow suit. So that's looking pretty good. And looking for support lines, we can obviously see there are a couple of interesting areas. $1.13 is definitely on the horizon there. That definitely seems like an interesting area to be paying attention to. So if we are to see a correction and a pullback, $1.13 is a pretty cool bounce that I think we could see. Anything lower than that, we obviously have to come down to these areas down here, where we then start talking about potentially, you know, $1.13, as I just said, move down a little bit lower, and we'll start seeing areas around here. I'm just trying to find a good area. Would probably be about this one here at $1.11, and so forth, right? But again, the main I guess the main, what do you want to call it, support is actually down here at $1.07. So that's the main area that we want to focus in on for XRP, and that's where we are likely to hopefully hold. If we don't hold that $1.07, then obviously do expect 93 or cent or something to that effect. So for XRP, we're really just waiting out, playing the field a little bit here, seeing how it kind of goes. And there is a downward trend, there is a new upward trend forming, but we need a few more candles to really get those anchored in so we can see exactly what's going on there. But overall, XRP has been performing quite well. I do think that we are going to see upwards to $16 this cycle. And again, it's backed up by the Fibonacci retracement tools. I don't just pluck these numbers out of the air, believe it or not. Otherwise, yeah, I think XRP is going to do very, very well. Win, lose, settle, doesn't really matter. It is going to be a fantastic end to the bull run for XRP, in my opinion. Guys, if you have found this brief update on XRP useful and informative, then do go ahead and hit the like button. I really appreciate that. Hit subscribe, tap the bell, select all notifications, and in doing so, you will not miss another update. Guys, with this said, done, and out of the way, I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I'll catch you in the next one.